Hey, what is going on? Hopefully, we had that good discussion about what happened the day before. There wasn't a lot that was new. We had, a lot of kissing, way too much kissing. And we had a little run in with two mean girls from the first book, Crash. So today we're going to, the focus today is going to be on the vision. And since Jules has experience with it, what can be done? And do it. Let's get into it. All right. Right after the last thing we read, remember, was the about the misophonia, when you can't really stand people eating things like carrots in a quiet room. Sawyer eyes close, and he lets out a resigned breath. He shakes his head, slightest bit, and then he opens his eyes and stares at the whiteboard in front of us. I'm not exactly sure how to explain this, he says. I mean, I'm not sure what happened with you or how you saw your clues or whatever. He looks at me for help, and I realize I've never actually had a chance to describe to him what happened to me. I only told him that I saw a vision of a truck hitting his restaurant and exploding. All right, so this is probably done for two reasons. I mean, it's probably to remind the reader what her vision was, or if somebody is just reading Bang and they haven't read Crash, this gives us a pretty good review of what happened. Right at the bottom, the first time was at the movies, I say, before the previews. And when that turn off your phone ad, I saw a few seconds of the snowplow careening over the curb, smashing into your restaurant, exploding. There was never any sound, just the picture. And then Jose Cuervo billboard. It still had a shot of the truck explosion. I hesitate as I relive it, having tried so hard to block it out. Then I saw it on TV, and there was a new part added: 9 body bags in the snow. One of them was open, showing a face. I dropped my head into my hand, not wanting to say the next part. A face? He asks. I nod and whisper, your face. He's quiet for a long minute. Then he stands up and shoves his desk right up to mine, moving our uneaten food to a different desk. He sits back down, and we drape our arms around each other as I tell him the rest of it. I tell him about the gripping fear when I found out Agnati's was closed that one Saturday night. All the times I drove past his restaurant to check if it was still there. The way I studied the scenes and tried to figure out things out by the snow levels on the street. The visions, top of the next column, growing frequency, intensity, and urgency until almost every place I looked at was covered in the scene being played out. And my weird phone calls and visits to him, knowing there was no way he'd believe me, but having to do something about it. When I finish, he nods slowly, and then he says, mine has sound. Not voices or street sounds or background noises. 11 sounds, to be exact. All the same. He makes a gun with his fingers and thumb and points it at Mr. Pacelli's papier-mâché bust of Ivan Pavlov. Bang. Now, we could talk all about Pavlov and his dogs. Maybe we should do a mini lesson on that at one point. I don't know. I'll pause here. Does anybody know about Pavlov? Excuse me. Pavlov's dogs? Still have like allergies, I hope it is. But yeah, Pavlov's dogs. I don't know. I'll pause it just in case. And if not, we could probably take like 10 minutes out of a class and just talk about Pavlov. And since Mr. Pacelli isn't he a psychology teacher? He is, I think. So it would make sense that he has something about Pavlov in there. All right, chapter 5. My hand goes to my mouth. A shooting? I whisper. His mouth twitches. A school shooting. Oh my God. I look around the room as the shock of it hits home. Wait, here? Our school? His Adam apple bobs and his eyes turn desperate. I don't know, Jules. I can't tell where it is. Top of the next column. Tell me everything you can think of. At first, it was so quick. I missed it. I remember thinking, excuse me, wait, what just happened? And then brushing it off as me being tired. But then I started catching a glimpse of something out of the corner of my eye in the restaurant window. Like there was a person standing there on the other side with his arms raised straight out. But whenever I looked full on, he was gone. I rest my shoulder against I rest my head against his shoulder and stay quiet, not wanting to interrupt. The next thing was the billboard. A still picture of a figure, arms raised, pointing straight ahead, firing a gun, muzzle flash and everything. I frown. Muzzle flash. When you pull the trigger of a gun, it ignites gunpowder, which explodes, pushing the bullet out. There's a little flash of fire that comes out of the barrel, but you can't actually see it. Why not? He shrugs and thinks about that for a minute, partly because it happens really fast, but also because there's usually too much natural light, I guess. So this vision of yours, it happens at night. Top of the next column, he frowns. He says, and then he looks at me. Maybe. You're good at this. I give a sword laugh. Forced on the job training makes you an expert in a hurry. You'll learn, kid. Stick with me. No worries there, he says, looking slightly relieved. So you're only seeing stills and you hear gunfire from them? No sound from the stills. We have TVs in the restaurant bar. Not long after the billboard incident, when I was bussing a table, I glanced at it, saw the same figure, person with a gun, arms outstretched, and he was stepping backward and swinging the gun wide like he was feeling threatened. I stopped working and stared at it, and then the gunshots exploded in my head, and I dropped my tray. I wince. Was it dark? He hesitates. Well, I could see the guy, not his face. He was turned away, and I could see bodies, but it wasn't sunny or bright in there or anything. I knit my brows, thinking, how do you know this guy is out of school? I don't know. It's just looked like a school. It was all really fast. It felt schoolish. Yeah, okay. I say, trying not to sound impatient. I remember how many hundreds of times, top of the next column, I had to see mine before I caught everything. You'll get more information eventually. Just then, somebody opens the door, sees us, and said, oops, really loudly. I can hear people swarming in the hallways. The dude closed the door again, and I glance at the clock. 4 minutes until lunch is over. Sawyer follows my gaze. That went way too fast, he says. Getting up, he picks up the food trays and stacks one on top of the other like the server pro that he is, balancing them with one hand. I guess I should get these back to the kitchen. I stand up too, grabbing a roll from the top tray and pulling a hunk off. You should try to eat something. I say, you're going to need energy. He gives me a weary smile. Does that mean it only gets worse from here? I nod, taking a bite of the roll. And it doesn't end until I swallow, till it's over. We walk to the door and he pauses. Wait a sec. With his free hand, he reaches into his pocket. I hope this isn't weird, he says. And you can say no and I won't be offended or anything. But I can't stand not being able to talk to you, especially with this thing going on. Top of the next column. He pulls out a cell phone and hands it to me. This is one of those cheap prepaid ones, no frills, phone only. I take it. It feels like I just got out of jail. You are brilliant, I say, turning it over in my hand, and then I look up at him, and my heart swishes. Thank you. Don't get caught. I won't. I shove the phone in my pocket, reach up, thumbing the corner of his mouth until he gives me the smile I love. I'll call you tonight. It's amazing how nice it feels to be able to say that. He hesitates, his hand on the doorknob. Jules? I look at him. In the vision, I don't see any faces I know. Oh, I'm not sure what he's trying to say. Okay, well, that's good, right? Top of the next column. But that's not what he means. He hesitates, and then he squeezes his eyes shut like he's making the hardest decision of his life and says, I was kind of wondering what happens if I don't want to do this. All right, so there's a good question there. Oh my gosh, as my voice is not really doing well. So what happens if he doesn't want any part of this? I mean, you can imagine it seems like he'll just keep seeing the vision over and over. Then he'll have the guilt that he has to deal with. But we don't know any faces. I keep saying, like, it would be perfect if she was the victim of this school shooting, like she saved his life, and now it's time for him to save her life. But we'll get to that. Maybe it happens, maybe it doesn't. And it seems like if you're trying to sleep and those, the vision happens to you at night, like sounds like those gunshots are pretty realistic. So maybe not so good. I guess what would you rather have? The vision of the snowplow or the vision of the gunshots? I personally would probably want to have the snowplow thing. I mean, it seems like less risk there. And he doesn't know if it's at a school or not. So a lot that we don't know, but he's going to have to keep figuring that out. Part of the story, I'm sure. The bell. Oh, I want to mention the cell phone too. I think they call that a burner phone, right? When you don't want anybody to know that you have it and you can just like throw it away if you need it. I think criminals use burner phones. So she basically has a burner phone on her now. Excuse me. The bell rings before I can answer. And besides, the question is too much to absorb in 10 seconds. So we say a hasty goodbye. All afternoon, I think about what he said and wonder if he doesn't know or care about any of the people in the vision. Does he have to do something? Is he legally obligated to do something? What about like morally? Till the next column. My guess is that my vision probably wouldn't have gone away whether I saved people or not. But I didn't know that back then. Does that change anything? I go back in time in my mind. If I knew that the vision would stop pounding me at every turn, if I only waited long enough, would I have done what I did? That one's not hard. Sure, I would have, because Sawyer's dead face in the body bag. But then I wonder how I would have looked at it if it had been a stranger's face. If every part of the vision stayed the same except Sawyer wasn't going to be hurt or killed, would I have done what I did? Top of the next column. Not quite as simple, but the answer is still yes, because it was Sawyer's family's business. And the chances were good that some of the family members filled the other body bags. As much as we both are disgusted by our own parents' behavior, and I'm not talking just my dad's affair with Sawyer's mom, but also the ridiculous rivalry over a stupid sauce recipe, that doesn't mean we want them to die. And I wouldn't want Sawyer to go through that pain. But what if I knew back then what I know now, and it wasn't Ignati's restaurant, but some other restaurant somewhere else? If I knew that the visions would get worse and become insane, but I knew that it would end as soon as the crash was over, would I still risk my life to save those people? I don't think I know the answer. And that is a really good question. Like, if this vision, like they live in Chicago, but what if the school shooting or shooting itself is like somewhere in Cleveland or Houston or whatever? I mean, are they going to have to travel to that place to make it stop? I'm not so sure. And I'm not sure I have the voice to continue. All right, that'll be it for today. Hope you enjoyed it. Adios.